Hi, I'm Corey, and I have too many tapes. Comic book is a really, really broad category. You've got Marvel and DC, sure, those are the big boys. Then you've got Dark Horse and Image and IDW if you're fancy and want something darker. But if you're not fancy, well, there are plenty of options there too. There's always Archie comics, which have their appeal. There is, well, was a layer beneath that, though. Enter Harvey Comics. If Archie could never make it out of the 50s and 60s, Harvey could never make it out of the 30s and 40s. I mean, look at their two most successful characters, Casper the Friendly Ghost and Richie Rich. And as comics go, they weren't amazing. There's a fan base there, I'm sure of it. I don't want to make anybody mad, but this style is extremely not my scene. For some reason, though, amongst the rush in the post-Batman world of the 90s to adapt a bunch of kid-focused hyper-nostalgia for the greatest and silent generation types, we got two big-budget adaptations of Harvey Comics' highest-profile properties. Casper was a smash hit. Richie Rich, a bit less so. Now, mind you, I said big budget. There's another Harvey character, though, one who maybe wasn't worth a splashy $30 million kids film. So they cut that budget to a tenth and gave the directing gig to a guy whose biggest credits are playing Flounder in Animal House and the naive but sympathetic assistant to a complex intergalactic despot on 110 episodes of Babylon 5. He then filled the movie with B, C, D, and Z-list sitcom actors from the 70s who were down on their luck and needed paying work. The result was a project that baffles me to my core. This time on Too Many Tapes, we're covering one of the strangest real movies I've ever covered in tape form. I give you Baby Huey's Great Easter Adventure. It's still in one of those rental sleeves.
1 + 1 is...
Wait, what? I thought we were doing Baby Huey. When I watched this the first time, I genuinely didn't realize the film had begun. I thought it was the start of another trailer. They say that the first image of your film should tell you everything you need to know about its themes. Our first image here is a sleepy dog. From this information, the prevailing theme here is either taking a 90-minute nap is better than watching this film, or sometimes it's best to let sleeping dogs and/or antiquated intellectual properties lie. That being said, I'm a sucker for vaudevillian flop sweat, and this nonsensical scene between P.T. Winsaki, a mid-tier Las Vegas cabaret producer played by a man whose literal, actual Christian name is Joseph Bologna, Joey Bologna, a man with a Mike Birbiglia bit as a name, and Bernie, a desperate Animal Act manager played by Squiggy from Laverne and Shirley, is weirdly stock staple for this era of low-budget kids programming. It feels like the setup for the Muppet movie a bit, but with all of the wonder and charm wrung out of it. For some reason, a bunch of movies from this time all involve talent scouts, unscrupulous producers, bad agents, and their ilk. Because if there's one thing kids love more than anything, it's a failing Vegas Animal Act in need of fresh talent. It's self-referential knife sharpening from a lot of people with bad experiences in the film industry, but those sharpened knives are still too dull to cut in the ways films like The Player, Get Shorty, and Bowfinger do. David L. Lander, who plays Bernie, is giving it his best shot with non-existent material, but he's constantly undermined by the film's choices. His hair is terrible, his makeup is carrot orange, and they've shoved him in a sleazy 70s suit that makes him look like, well, a washed-up sitcom actor who can't afford a new blazer. There's an air of desperation in the character that feels maybe not so far away from Lander's actual mental state while making the film.
You don't have to do it quite the rhythm I'm doing.
Joey Bologna, on the other hand, is going for it. His solution to every problem? Shouting. So much shouting. He only has one volume and it's ear-splitting. He's not happy with the dog, obviously. We cut to an exterior and we have our credit sequence. It's Easter time in the city of Bitsville and everybody's painting eggs and faces and eating eggs. A kid knocks over a can and he turns that into a lovely excuse to skip school, practice his foot-eye coordination, and encounter surreptitious, enormous eggs that become unlikely friends. Nick here is played by Michael Angarano, who would later go on to feature heavily in Sky High, Red State, and Best Picture winner Oppenheimer. So maybe when you're young and have talent, a movie like this won't totally destroy your career. Nick kicks this can for an absurdly long time, long enough for us to get most of our credits in. He must live outside of the school district and they bus him in or something, and then encounters a nightmarish boulder-sized egg that falls out of the back of a comically small delivery truck. feel bad for that delivery driver. There can't be more than 2 of those eggs in the back of the truck, so you're showing up to your destination with 50% of your shipment missing. They're gonna dock his pay. How is he gonna make rent this month? That story would be more interesting than the next hour and 15 minutes, I guarantee it. Anyway, Nick has no survival instincts. He sees this enormous egg hatch and proceeds to approach the egg and take home what emerges from it. Speaking of home, the set here is the most Leave It to Beaver Honey Nut Cheerios commercial set that has ever been crafted by Hollywood professionals. Ridiculously high-key sitcom lighting, that fakey little piece of foliage out the back window, valences that are set at the bottom of the window so you can't see the movie lights. It's all too perfect, too empty. Nick's parents are even a bit too perfect in that American sitcom kind of way. Played by Marcia Brady and Joe Azuzu, they're less characters than archetypes. Nick's dad is a tinkerer who keeps breaking things, and Nick's mom is, well, the wise, long-suffering sitcom mom. This is the normal speed for Maureen McCormick, who is digging herself out of a particularly bad hole of addiction and mental issues. Honestly, given the material she's doing, straightforward and solid work. All of this is moot, though. You're not here for me waxing philosophical about the state of these 70s and 80s sitcom stars who needed something, anything, to keep their SAG insurance. You're here for nightmare puppets and mascot costumes, and that's exactly what you get. Well, it's what you will get. Later, we tease it, but we have a self-indulgent baseball scene that only really serves to let Londo Mollari argue with Veer Cotto one last time.
Rick, my gosh. Come on, you heard him. There's nowhere in the rulebooks that says he can't play.
There's nowhere in the rules, Ricky. Play ball! This is unbelievable!
That one's for my Babylon 5 heads out there. I know you're out there. Drop a Zathras in the comments if you're out there. This is how we're introduced to Huey. Like, he's both a threat and totally banal. Nick wants to put him in as a pinch hitter to save the game, and they rip off the "ain't no rule in the book that says a dog can't play basketball" bit from Air Bud as an excuse to let him play. And maybe there should be a rule in the book that says a 7-foot-tall baby duck can't play in a Little League match, despite the fact that he meets all of the other requirements. But there would never be a reason to get that specific in the enumerated rules. Same goes for Air Bud. The mere thought of adding no giant ducks to the rulebook would be a disgrace to the rulebook and common sense. But on to our pinch hitter. Baby Huey's establishing shot is presented as a triumph, a revelation, and the first thing that comes to mind is Mall Easter Bunny. Honestly though, he's the right level of cartoony for this context. The design could be so much worse. They could have tried to go realistic, think Howard the Duck. They could have spent less money and had the eyes not move. We could have gotten away with Big Bird technology here, but they spent probably a third of their budget getting the lip movement and eye movement a bit more complex. There were probably radio controls involved in here like it was the 90s Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movies, and it mostly works. Huey has to be, coached to figure out what a baseball bat is, seeing as this is one of the first activities he's performed since, being born. And after a few strikes, he hits it out of the park into a school principal's office, out of said office, and past a very irate Roger Bumpus, the voice of Squidward.
Minnie, you won't believe this. They got a giant duck playing baseball over at the field.
He was also the guy who had to be shoved inside of the Baby Huey suit, so it's nice to know that he had at least one day on set where he wasn't drenched in sweat. Anyway, Huey makes the game-winning home run and everyone rejoices like we didn't just meet this thing 2 minutes ago. He hasn't even had dialogue yet. Huey and Nick meander their way home and we finally get our first listen to what this thing sounds like.
I could never get a hit off her.
Sure you could do it. You just can't be scared of doing it, that's all.
Yep. It's the director doing the voice. He must have really believed in this. Maybe he needed to focus on the other aspects of filmmaking here. He's gone too deep into character. He's directing the movie like somebody who's just been born. We get some mild slapstick shenanigans and a lengthy explanation of the first time Huey met Nick's parents. This scene should have been in the movie. There are so many nothing scenes in this movie, and we skip over boy brings home enormous duck creature for the first time. There's a real lack of commitment from anyone in the A-plot here. Not a lot of this is what we're gonna do and more, sure. It's a shaggy, poetic, coming-of-age story akin to Stand By Me, but with none of the charm, authenticity, or dead bodies. Either that or it's like if Paddington was written, directed, and performed by a cast and crew who all got stuck on the zipper at their local county fair for 48 hours straight and still needed to start shooting immediately afterward. It's great that Nick's solo route home takes him right next to something called Dead Man's Gulch, though. Love a gorge. You gotta have a gorge in a movie like this. Ain't no rule that says a duck can't play baseball, but there is a rule that says a kid's movie needs a dangerous gorge. You see, the 90s were a different time. You could just walk home from school through something called Dead Man's Gulch as long as you were back before the streetlights came on. Speaking of the 90s, this thing was made in 1999, but it looks, feels, and acts like a script that had been sitting in a dusty drawer since 1975. It's creaky, it's antiquated, it's amateurish. This thing doesn't even look as baseline good as the Get Street Smart videos I've covered through the years, and they're basically the same level of production. It just goes to show that actors don't always make the best directors. But enough of my babbling, we have to watch two aging comedians chase each other around a table.
And I'm fed up with you.
Oh, you do like me, Bob. I think you should really think twice about this. No, this is a good jacket.
Squiggy, or Bernie, gets a call on the in-office payphone, classy, and learns about Huey. News travels fast in a town as small as Bitsville, I guess. On a side note, they're not treating this turtle well in this scene. They got the ASPCA clearance, but Squiggy ain't qualified to be moving big turtles like that. We cut back to the bird, who is christened Huey because he keeps saying, well, Huey. From now on, we'll wait until children can speak before we name them, and only name them after their first words. We'll be a country of mamas, dadas, and babas. Huey knocks down a live power line, and then he and Nick stroll through downtown Bitsville to the shock and horror of the residents. They set up a big town Easter egg hunt, create some traffic accidents, play some hopscotch, do some throwaway strength gags, and finally meet the first of several conflicts in this movie, embodied by busybody neighbor who is intolerant of baby Huey because he is different. This is a stock character designed to let us know that the conflict of this film will be whether or not the town accepts baby Huey, which will, of course, lead to a late second act misunderstanding that makes Huey feel unwanted until the wisdom of the children speaks to the cold dead hearts of the adults in the world and makes a change. The trick to doing stuff like this well is by masking these tropes in interesting ways or making the characters have a hook that distracts you from their obvious plot functions. This film does not do this. It does the inverse, in fact. It leans into its lack of hook and wears it proudly on its worn-out, threadbare sleeves. When Saki and Bernie roll into town in a purple limousine to add additional superfluous conflict, this naturally is followed by the setup for the other conflict of the movie, when Harvey Korman shows up in a tree sporting a goofy safari outfit and equally goofy accent.
Himmel. It's a duck. I must have him.
This is when the movie broke me, and not because the filmmaking was bad, though it is very, very bad. It was when I realized that this movie was essentially a rehab project. Korman was nearing the end of his career and the end of his life. He looks frail in this. Sad. He's attempting to stir up some of that sharp, beautiful magic he's capable of delivering, but there's not enough in this pencil sketch of a character to work with, so he puts as many bells and whistles on the performance as he can. He's giving an effort. In fact, most of the legacy folks in here are trying their best. I can't help but feel sympathetic to these people. Acting is a job, a tough job, and when your sitcom was over in the 70s or 80s, there was no guarantee that the residuals would last a lifetime. Some of these people fell into alcohol and drugs and became unhireable. The industry chewed them up, spit them out, and left them for dead. If the only lifeline of live-action work was a direct-to-VHS kids movie, was that so shameful? If it meant that there was food on their plate and a roof over their head, I don't know, guys. I know I'm supposed to be jokey, funny man about stuff like this, but maybe Stephen Furst was a decent, solid guy who was giving his friends a leg up when they needed it. It's so easy to poke holes in movies like this, and I will continue to do so, if only to steer out of this very serious spiral, but I want to be clear. The problem with this movie isn't that it exists or that it stars a bunch of washed-up talent. It's that the collection of talent involved in this project should have been given something worthy of their skills as performers. Anyway, Harvey Korman falls out of a tree upon seeing the enormous lumbering frame of baby Huey, and when Saki and Bernie establish that they know Harvey Korman from some previous convoluted bird heist. It's nice that the universe of this movie is so small, everybody's all cozy. Upon returning home, Huey lifts a GMC Sierra off of its front wheels like it's made out of balsa wood, which terrifies Nick's dad, who is changing said GMC Sierra's oil. However, he's not terrified enough to, say, get rid of the giant bird who poses a safety risk to his wife and child. Instead, he retreats indoors and begins a nonsensical and surreal montage in which they attempt to feed Huey various kinds of bread and toast. course never puts any of the bread in his mouth. This would damage the sensitive animatronic equipment, and they've probably only got one head, so instead they just kind of toss bread at him. We get some bedtime routines, a mildly concussive pillow fight,
Oops.
a totally predictable Step Brothers-style bunk bed collapse, and more milquetoast complaints from the bigoted neighbor lady. We're laying on the hate real thick here. No subtext, no nuance. She is stock nosy neighbor number one who is perfectly acceptable for such a back-of-the-napkin style story. The actress is bringing a bit of drunk energy to it, though.
He's much better than he thinks he is.
What's that got to do with anything? You got no coffee here.
Am I off base? What's in the coffee mug? The point of this Nick-Huey dynamic, as laid out by the mom, is that Nick is terrified of everything, but Huey, being a fearless baby who will try anything, can be a good influence on Nick to come out of his, shell, so to speak. This movie is rubbing off on me and not in a good way. I'm very impressionable. Gotta watch myself on the puns. Can't get too egg-cited. Speaking of the racist neighbor, she's also the keeper of the telephone gossip train. This sequence is rough, but it's kinda great. It seems like Serial Mom, but for kids and with none of the satire.
Amanda, well, what do you think? That bird's still in town. What are Jennifer and Andy thinking?
He destroyed 16 cars and a large bus. Nothing like this has ever happened in Pittsfield before. No, I don't think we should tell anyone.
Back to Mel Brooks's cousin presents the producers, and we finally have something worthwhile. It's oddly comforting watching these two flop sweat kings riff off each other. I genuinely wonder how much of the dialogue was actually in the script and how much they ad-libbed. It's gotta be close to 50-50. It's inspired vamping.
Talent? What's talent got to do with anything? You don't need talent to be a star in Las Vegas. You just need to be different.
The fantasy sequences betray a bit of potential self-awareness here. First off, Huey's playing Circus Circus, objectively the worst hotel on the Las Vegas Strip. Secondly, he's terrible. Baby Huey in a Vegas kickline is something I didn't know I needed to see. That being said, I still don't know if I needed to see it. You're gonna see it though, because I have that power. We get more fantasy vamping before a day/costume change for Winsaki into a wild and ridiculous faux snakeskin suit. He gives Huey the hard sell. Naturally, Huey declines. It's 35 minutes into the movie after all. Speaking of which, Kermit turned this kind of gig down at minute 18 in the Muppet movie. Efficiency, people. Huey and Nick leave for school, and we get the worst and laziest joke in the film.
Are you thinking what I'm thinking?
I sure am. What are you thinking?
Pinky and the Brain had been off television for less than a year. They perfected this joke format. Have the dumb one say something totally irrelevant. It's that simple. This isn't even a joke, it's just padding. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? Yeah, PT, but how would we get the Sharks to play the piano in the first place? See, I made that one off the top of my head. It's not hard. I'm not that funny. But before we forget, Harvey Korman's still here, and he's sounding more and more like Peter Lorre with every passing minute.
The bird. I must have that bird.
If a guy doing a funny accent and a ridiculous pratfall out of a tree can't make me laugh, nothing this movie can do will. And that's sad. Maybe I'm jaded. Did this work for anybody, ever? Next we get some of the sleepiest, lowest stakes playground shenanigans in the history of shenanigans. It's shot like a silent film with none of the charm or precision. Huey gets shuffled into the school by the guy who played the dean in Animal House, and he proceeds to disrupt the flow of the school day like a looming specter of chaos. He paints some eggs for the big town Easter egg hunt thing, Squiggy hides behind a single branch like a doofus to steal some tail feathers, and we get our first musical number. It's tuneless, grating, and oddly placed in the overall scheme of things.
Doing the duck, doing the duck, doing the duck, doing the duck.
We're halfway through this story, just starting with the songs now, and there are still 4 left. It's like the screenwriters finished the script for this thing thinking it would be a 60-minute special and realized, hey, if we throw a few songs in here, we can beef it up to 80 minutes, sell it on VHS as a feature-length movie, and get some ASCAP residuals for the songs in the process. Now that I mention it, he can generate song and dance numbers off of the top of his head, so maybe Squiggy and Joey Baloney have something here? He also possesses the power of musicals within him, that magical energy that warps reality into one where everyone feels the need to sing and dance. Teachers enter, protest, and find themselves unable to help themselves. They're compelled by the overwhelming urge to join the number. It's just science. Musical theater science, the most sequined of the sciences. Huey's musical magic manifests as a roaring rampage of nonsense and destruction. School music programs are underfunded enough as it is without 7-foot-tall anthropomorphic baby ducks destroying instruments and classroom equipment. Has the whole world gone mad?
Has the whole world gone mad?
That's my line. Anyway, the principal gives Nick the bill for Huey's damages, drops another moldy Animal House reference, and then Huey gets pulled into Harvey Korman's office because this elementary school has an ornithology class. This was written as a college movie initially, wasn't it? Of all the ridiculously talented and funny people trapped in this movie, Korman is the one who's working the hardest with the least material. Like I said earlier, with a lack of clear motivation or interiority, he's trying to turn the character into a game, channeling Peter Sellers and Strangelove. But there's nothing underneath him to support the shtick, so it's, well, just shtick. And I mean it too, there's nothing for him here. It's totally empty, airy. These scenes have the simplest of objectives, but the space between point A and point B is so vast that you can't help but meander your way there, fumbling in the dark to find a path. Somehow, Huey gets Professor Von Klupp with a tranquilizer syringe, and we do another one of those disorienting time jumps to the professor later in the day at a gun shop as he's buying an enormous net. A bit of business so old and neglected that it's accumulated that awful combination of dust and settled aerosolized cooking grease. I need to clean my house better. The Vegas boys and the professor finally share a scene together, and it's oddly the best thing in the film. As it turns out, when you have three people who are good at riffing off of each other, you get something worth watching. Who would have thunk?
Put it on my tab. He's definitely after the duck. But I don't need a net because I've got this.
Hair?
That being said, none of this belongs in a movie like this. We don't need 2 villains, let alone 3, let alone 4. Make it a chase and maybe you've got something, but this state of cryogenic stasis is unbearable. No actual events that move the story forward are happening here. The closest we've come to a conflict is the bill that Huey and Nick need to pay to fix the school, but even that is never taken all that seriously.
I don't know what we're gonna do. This is really gonna cost us. We can't have this keep happening.
I'll call today.
You call now.
I'll call now.
There's some more Gremlins Inventor Dad shenanigans, Klupp dresses up like Huey's mom, and the Vegas guys break into the school to steal the town's Easter eggs.
Boss,
What?
don't look now, but we are not alone.
This is more time-filling, but I'd rather 20 minutes with Winsaki and Bernie than another moment with Huey.
Come to Papa. Not you, the eggs.
Winsaki explains his plan in detail to Bernie.
Why are you telling me all this? It's plot exposition. It has to go somewhere.
They're gonna make it look like Huey stole the town's Easter eggs, so he gets run out on a rail and has no choice but to sign up for the Vegas show. I'm starting to think that these guys may not be entirely ethical in their approach to show business. All of this leads, naturally, to a baffling musical number about all of Winsaki's unrealistic achievements, including painting Kermit the Frog green, filling up Winnie the Pooh, and introducing Beavis to Butthead. Every time they drop a contemporary to the 90s reference in this thing, I wince a little and remember that this isn't a long-forgotten 70s object, but something that was made in a post-cell phone, post-internet world. Austin Powers came out before this thing, and he adjusted to the 90s better than this mess.
Come on, Bernie, pick him up, put him down.
I'm picking, I'm putting.
You can do it, kid. You can do it.
I can?
The day of the big Easter egg hunt arrives, and Winsaki's plan goes exactly as he devised. The town blames Huey, and he runs away into the woods. The kids rise to his defense. He's a good guy, you see, and this changes their minds, or Nick's mom's mind, at least.
It's wrong to accuse someone of doing something bad unless you're sure that they did it.
But Huey isn't in this scene at all. In fact, they have to send out a whole search party looking for him. Instead, he's at the docks, talking to ducks. The dock ducks. Say that 5 times fast. Unfortunately for him, his terrifying visage and enormous frame scares the poor doc ducks away, leading to another dead-on-arrival musical number.
I don't belong anywhere, and I'm feeling so lonely.
Did Furst make these up on the spot? You can't do the songs last minute. Gotta have those before the day of shooting, bud.
Why am I so different?
Okay, wait, hold up, let him cook.
I'm the same as you inside.
True. Inside, we are all celebrated voice actor Roger Bumpus. This is the only one of these musical numbers with anything resembling real charm. A lament almost makes sense here, and it's good to literalize the second act turning point. Showing your character at their lowest moment is structurally critical, and a song can go a long way to drive the point home, especially in a film with this little subtext. And the theme we're sloppily working with here is this. Giant talking baby ducks are the same as you and me, and should be treated with dignity and respect, regardless of the property damage they cause. I can get down with that. I too wish to be held blameless if I ever crash my car through the front door of a Little Caesars or accidentally rip a door off its hinges. I am baby.
Ooh-wee!
Note, I am not baby. While looking for a place to hide the stolen eggs, one more question. Why not inside a trash bag in a dumpster? When Saki and Bernie find that gorge from earlier. Get used to this gorge, kids. We're gonna get a lot more gorge. Back in the woods, little Audrey has found Huey and they have a heart-to-heart. Unfortunately, this heart-to-heart comes in the form of another musical number. And you guessed it, it's time to talk choreography. Let's take a look at Audrey in the early shots here. She starts on camera right, crosses behind him, steps up on the log, and hangs on his arm. She then, seemingly for no reason, crosses back behind him, jumps over the branch, and gestures for his hand to lead him out of the frame. Why? Why do it this way? I'll tell you why. They're filming in a bland location, they only had good coverage from that boring master, and they had no plan on how to make a shot that lingers that long visually dynamic. I've seen cheaper evangelical films with better choreography than this, and everyone involved here is an ostensible Hollywood professional. It's embarrassing. And that embarrassment continues through the number. The song is slow, shouty, and atonal. The shot choices and camera placements are so baffling. They do a lot of tree business. And what's the point of this song? It's a counterpoint to Huey's lament, an instant negation of the last 3 minutes. We could have avoided all of this.
So Huey, come on. This is where you belong.
This is where I belong.
So Huey, come on. This is where you belong.
This is where I belong.
Huey and Audrey return to the Easter celebration, but immediately have to leave because Nick got himself stuck in the dang gorge. See, I told you the gorge would come back. They rush off to save him with Professor Von Klupp in pursuit. Klupp, in true Klupp fashion, falls into the gorge and to his death, destroyed by his hubris and clumsiness. R.I.P. in peace, Von Klupp. Gone before his time. A tow truck arrives, Audrey starts shouting for a Mr. Lynch, and I swear on my life that in this moment I was fully convinced David Lynch was going to step out of that tow truck to save the day. The walls of reality in this film are that thin. We're on the threadbare border between the Harveyverse and Twin Peaks. Unfortunately, it's just Nick's dad, who treats the mortal danger that his son is in with the blissful detachment that only comes from high-dosage horse tranquilizers. Turns out he isn't bad at fixing stuff, he's just on a different plane of reality. Nick's dad entrusts the operation of a tow truck and the safety of his firstborn child to the 7-foot-tall talking baby duck that has a habit of destroying everything he touches, a consistent decision given his cavalier stance on home appliance safety. Huey, again a literal baby, turns on the tow truck and manages to almost back himself into the gorge. Luckily, he figures out how to drive mere moments before catastrophe. They use the winch to get Nick, the Easter eggs, and a shockingly not dead Professor Von Klupp out of the gorge, and all of this is conveyed via montage. There's no tension. No, will Huey get to Nick in time? No, oh no, my hand is slipping moment. There's no real opportunity for Huey to prove himself as a hero. He's just there, involved. We fade back to the Easter celebration to mercifully wrap up this whole cursed business. After a delightful temper tantrum—
Don't interrupt me! I'm having a temper tantrum!
Stealing that one— when Saki and Bernie get arrested after almost mowing down baby Huey with their car. The Easter egg hunt proceeds as planned, and Huey discovers another giant egg. Great, that's all we need, more enormous talking ducks. Luckily, we don't have to see the aftermath of that because A, we can't afford another costume, and B, there's a town-wide musical number to end the movie instead. As bad as the Audrey number was, this is infinitely worse. The guy who shot this was the cinematographer of William Friedkin's Sorcerer, for crying out loud, but the way Furst stages this for the camera is amateurish and unspeakably inefficient from an editing standpoint. Instead of having shots that showcase all of the fun, varied pockets of group choreography, he's instead chosen to stage the whole number seemingly in one go, with multiple cameras lazily searching through the crowd footage for interesting moments like we're shooting a wedding or trying to find a person in a basketball stadium who kind of looks like a celebrity to throw up on the Jumbotron. There are so many sloppy zooms, reframes, and unplanned focus changes. It hurts. It hurts to watch. The children arrange the Easter eggs to read Happy Easter on the lawn in an equally unfocused crane shot, and that's it. On one hand, this was a disaster, and I think everyone involved should be jailed, fined, or both. On the other, maybe we just let people make movies like this. Did this harm anyone? No. Well, maybe that turtle got roughhoused a bit more than it should have, and I certainly took psychic damage from having seen it, but the joy of the video store experience in the 90s was one of uncertainty. If it wasn't something you'd already seen, you didn't really know going into the video store if the video you picked out was going to be good or bad. You just hoped for the best and plowed through. Sometimes you found an unexpected new favorite, and sometimes you found the worst thing you'd ever seen. But you spent money on it, so you finished it. That's gone away a bit in the content age. These days, if something this baffling and under the radar came across a streaming service, a few dedicated weirdos would discover it and cherish it for its strangeness, but most people would either never find it or turn it off after 5 minutes and scroll on to the next thing. So I come here to tell you today, watch more movies. Finish more movies. Finish more bad movies even. Life is short, sure, but somebody believed in whatever it was that they were shooting. Most of the time, at least. It takes a bunch of really dedicated craftspeople, tradespeople, and artists to make anything. Even a film as bad as Baby Huey's Great Easter Adventure. That's worth a small amount of respect and attention, at least. And you never know, you might find something strange, mesmerizing, or unforgettable. You probably won't, but the gamble was always more fun than the win anyway. Thank you all for watching Too Many Tapes. Please like this video, subscribe to my channel, and hit the bell icon to get updates for when I upload videos. Also, if you like this video or any of the videos I make, why not recommend me to a friend? It's free, it's easy, it's, dare I say, fun? Did you come across this movie in the video store as a kid? What was your experience with it? Let me know in the comments. If you want to help out a small YouTube channel, consider donating $1 or more a month to my Patreon. For just $2 a month, you get early access to my videos. Every dollar I get through my Patreon goes to fund tapes and films to cover, as well as new equipment to make the show look and sound as good as it possibly can, so thank you for your support. If you donate $50 or more a month like Natto Kitsch, you get a movie recommendation. This month I'm recommending 2018's Paddington 2. It's one of my favorite films of all time, but not ever something I'd do a video on. The market's a little bit saturated with love for it. That being said, if you're looking for a movie about a mischievous anthropomorphic animal that gets into clumsy slapstick while being pursued by comical villains, this is the Citizen Kane of that very, very niche genre. It's beautifully made, heartfelt, and extremely funny. Seriously, there's not much more I can say that hasn't already been said. If you haven't seen Paddington 2, you should see it. For $10 or more a month, you're Londo Mollari and Veer Cotto arguing about baseball because it's $10 a month and it's two guys from Babylon 5 and 2 5s is 10. They're not all gonna be winners, folks. And for $5 a month, you're all stars of a P.T. Winsaki Vegas spectacular called Early Access to My Videos. It's a confusing title. The show closed after a week. Thank you all again for watching, and I'll see you next time on Too Many Tapes. Be so simple, right? You set up a big muscle. Wow. Incompetence. I'd fire me, but I'm the only one.